Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we are going to be talking about coping after the loss of a spouse. And that's dear to my heart right now because I lost your dad 3 years ago. So it's going to be an interesting topic.
Absolutely. I will be interested in what you and the guests have to say today about it. And you know, you've written a book that is similar, that has something to do with coping after the loss of a spouse.
Absolutely. My fiance, Dr. Frank Powers, and I have written a book called Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating. And for all of you who've had a loss and are wanting to date again, we hope that you will find some hope in this book. It's gotten some very good reviews so far. And you can pre-order it at Open to Hope, or you can go to my site at the Dating Doctors and pre-order the book. And it's going to be released on Valentine's Day. And all of the proceeds for the book go to our foundation, Open to Hope, with a mission of helping people find hope after loss.
Great, Mom. Okay, so I'm going to start with the guests so that we can get on with the show. And darn it, I know Dawn, but I don't know if I'm going to be pronouncing her name right. So Dawn Nargi. Dawn is the executive director of the W Connection, an organization she co-founded in 2009 after the death of her husband. She is also an adjunct professor and teaches technology and nonprofit management at various universities. So welcome, Dawn.
Thank you.
Next to Dawn is Aliza Marlin.
Hi.
Aliza is a widow also, whose early career was spent as a musical theater actor where she met her husband, Gary. And he was a theatrical electrician for Broadway. Aliza manages Global Creative Awards and serves as vice president of the board of directors of the Adult Congenital Heart Association and as a GEM volunteer with the W Connection. So welcome, Aliza.
Thank you.
And next to Aliza is Jennifer O'Brien. Jennifer kept an art journal as a form of self-care during her late husband Bob's 22-month illness. It was published as the Hospice Doctor's Widow, a journal, and it has won numerous awards. Jennifer has been a practice management consultant to physicians for over 35 years, so welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
So welcome all of you today to our show.
I was thinking that we probably want to kind of get a little rundown on how long it's been for you and maybe something about your loss. So you want to start?
So I have been a widow for 15 years. It's easy for me to remember because my husband was diagnosed with cancer when my son William was just 1 month old, and he died when he was 3 months old. So I became a new mom and a new widow.
Wow. So you only have to think of how old your son is.
Yes.
To know how long your husband's been gone.
Yes.
Wow.
Gary died a little over 5 years ago. He was an electrician for Broadway shows out of town, perfectly healthy, doing wonderfully. Had a great first day at work. He was working on a pre-Broadway tryout of a show. Had a great first day of load-in. Spoke to him that night. He was grocery shopping, and then the next morning he didn't show up for work, and he had passed away very suddenly. So yeah, it's been about 5.5 years for me.
It's been nearly 7 years since I lost my Bob. He was a hospice and palliative care physician and got cancer, and so we had to turn a lot of the wisdom that he had imparted on others onto ourselves for the course of his illness. Yeah.
And I guess I should tune in with me for people who don't know. So my husband Phil passed away 3 years ago of a staph infection after back surgery. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess maybe I should ask the first question since I'm the one here that has never lost a spouse, and my heart goes out to everybody. I'm wondering what is unique about spouse loss?
So I think, you know, people get the sadness, right? I think lots of times people get that with any loss you're going to be sad. I think with spousal loss is you lose the vision of the life that you thought you were going to have, right? I know for me, I had this vision of my husband Norman and I living in an apartment on the Upper West Side, raising our son William with our dog. So that vision was completely gone. So now you have to develop a new normal and rebuild your life.
And I'm just curious about the W connection. How did you decide to do that? I mean,
So I think, it's interesting. The other thing, it's, when you lose somebody, it's not like we all know what you're supposed to do, right? So I looked for a bereavement group, and I went to Gilda's Club. And Gilda's Club in Manhattan was great. And at the end of the year, they said, "You've graduated, ready, go." And I went, how do I raise my child on my own? How do I walk my dog? How do I was working as a technology executive on Wall Street. How do I go back to my job after maternity leave? I was still on maternity leave. So I looked around and I started connecting with other widows. And I started to realize that the best support came from other widows. And that was the genesis of the W Connection. We started our first chapter on the Upper West Side in my living room.
wow.
And now you're online, and people from all over
Yeah,
can connect with you.
the pandemic was interesting. With my technology background, I think we were in person with 13 chapters on March 4th.
Wow.
On March 5th, we became virtual. And we
Wow.
moved everything virtually.
Yeah,
Wow.
amazing.
And Aliza, what would you say is unique about a spouse loss?
I think it's those moments that you don't think about, the ones you take for granted. It's not about sitting down and having big conversations. It's about getting off the phone with my mom after an argument and wanting somebody there to just yell and scream and throw my arms up to, and them just being there for you. That in the momentness. Now, as my mom is getting older and my dad passed away a year after Gary died, it's just somebody to be in the moment with you. It's that person that's there that just understands it and shares this history of your other relationships. I think that is what I miss the most, and that is what has been the most profound for me.
It's that safe person that understands your family dynamics or your friend dynamics that you can really go to.
Things like, a leaky pipe under your sink are so much worse as a widow than they are when you're married. It's just like, oh my gosh, the whole place is falling apart and I'm by myself. And the truth is, Bob wouldn't have been able to fix that, right? But he would have been there to say, the pipe is leaking, and then kind of, I would take care of it. But that is amazingly tough. So the shared burden, and then there's also, Bob loved me for all my weirdness and my quirks, and he was proud of me, and I miss that. And he used to tell me, "You're safe," and I'm safe. But it was so nice when someone else told me that.
Well, and I'm imagining, in fact, I know this is to be true, there are certain roles that your spouses took that you didn't even realize maybe that they did take until they were no longer here.
Years ago, I was talking to Gary. Must have been a Saturday afternoon just before he was going to work. And I said something about, wow, this apartment is really clean. He said, yeah, I did that. What are you talking about? Don't you notice that every Saturday morning I take time and I clean the apartment? People don't do that. He said, most people actually do that. Most people take some time, put it aside each week, and they clean their apartment. I think you're wrong. He's like, you go ask people. So of course I did an informal survey of all of my friends, and apparently people do put aside time to clean their apartments. And I had no idea that for the 18 years we were together, somehow the apartment magically got cleaned because he was putting aside time.
And now that he's not here, you noticed one Saturday, wait a minute, why isn't my apartment clean today?
It takes several Saturdays.
Okay. That's interesting, right?
Several Saturdays.
Mom, what are your thoughts?
Well, we interviewed Joan from the Golden Bachelor, and one of the things that she said I thought was really interesting. She said, I felt like nobody saw me. And she said, I need to be seen. And she was saying, Gary on the Golden Bachelor, when she had her date with him or whatever, he actually made her feel seen again. And she said, I didn't realize that was what I was missing. I wasn't really seen. I thought that was pretty profound. And I think that it's so important to be loved and said, oh, that's a pretty dress, or, you know, it's so nice to be with you, or, you know, have that kind of rapport with someone. I think you miss that.
And the everyday things, like you might come out of your bedroom and they might say, oh, I like those earrings.
Right.
You know, just little things, I would think.
Yeah, yeah, just being seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about, and I know with Dad there was a lot of things that he did that he enjoyed. He enjoyed cleaning. So I was laughing that you were saying that. And my dad would, it was funny growing up because my dad would be in the house vacuuming, my mother would be outside cutting the lawn. I kid you not. She was outside gardening, he was inside, you know, dusting. So,
it is true. You know, when I hear you three, I'll have to say this, as an older person, older than you, I wasn't thinking about the future. You know, I had my kids and all that. I just see the Carters in their 90s, and I'm thinking, how many of us are out there that are saying, I want to be with them? And it's so hard because you have to do things you've never done before. You know,
when you
and
become a
things
widow,
that you don't want to do, and you know you're in charge of everything, and you know, and you just see these people going off into their golden years together, and you're like, yeah, that should be me. You know.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I find. I mean, I'm happy for all my friends and acquaintances who have their person still or have a new person, but every once in a while I feel a little envious.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the new person, there are a lot of new persons out there, which we talk about in the book. We're very much on dating and, you know, putting yourself out there if you miss that relationship and the loneliness. Not everyone does.
right?
You know,
I mean,
it's not for everyone.
and some people are just trying to figure out how to survive at this point.
You're right, exactly. Especially if you have kids.
Well, and you all
know.
said something which I think can be true. And my mom, like you said, maybe that's not true if you're older, but you not only lose your spouse, but you lose the future you thought you were going to have. You know, like you said, growing old
The
together,
Carters, you know,
yes,
going off.
you know, doing all these things together, raising your kids together, and you know, dealing with aging parents together, and just all
Just
these,
getting old together.
right, exactly, exactly. So I'm wondering what would you say to people that are trying to cope right now with this huge loss of their spouse, you know, that has blindsided them?
I'd say
What are your
it's
thoughts?
tough to start with. We know what you're going through. Try to be around some other people, peer support, to help you, because people do know what you're going through. That, you know, other people who've lost family members, you know, spouses. So there are people like the W Connection or Soaring Spirits Foundation, or, you know, your local whatever. I mean, try to get support. You know, that's the first thing I did. There's Cara in Palo Alto, California, where I'm from. And after Phil died, I thought, okay, now I need to take my own advice. So what would I tell somebody? I would tell them to contact your local, some organization, and get some support. So I called Cara and talked to them, and they got me a counselor, a one-to-one counselor. I've been a counselor for 40 years, and I'm in the grief and loss business, hey. And it was just wonderful. I joined a grief group.
Yeah, but tell them about the counselor. It was such a peer-to-peer organization that they set her up with a man that had a child die and a spouse die, because that's her loss.
Because I thought, well,
love
you'll
that.
never find anybody for me, Jim, the guy who
Yeah.
does Cara, and they had found this guy. It was absolutely fabulous. And so I saw him once a week online, and then I joined a grief support group online. But I found out that wasn't for me. So, you know, you have to find what's for you, because I'd been a counselor, and I kind of didn't like the way the woman ran the program. You know, because I've done groups for 40 years, and it wasn't the way I do a group, or what. It just wasn't for me. And I said to my counselor, you know, I'm in this grief support group, and it was from the same organization, and I said, it's really not for me. And he's like, well, why don't you quit? And I said, well, I don't think I can quit, because I don't want him to feel bad because I quit the group. He's like, no, this is about you. This is your life. This is your time. If you want to quit the group, quit the group. I said, well, I have to explain it. He said, no, you don't. You don't have to. Just tell him you're not going to show up for the group
Well,
again.
I think this is the power of peer-to-peer support, because he was a little further along in his journey than you were. So, sometimes we have to hold on to people as lifelines that are further along in the journey. And that's why I love what you're doing with the W Connection.
I think what we say is, well, at the W Connection, we have something called a free information session before you join, right? And we do that, and, I tell people, I said, different things work for different people, right? So for me, it was bereavement group, and it was great every Monday night just to cry my eyes out. I don't even think I could get through a sentence every time we go around the room. And then peer support, learning from another widow was what I needed. Because some of the things, like we said, they're practical things, like the plumbing, or like walking the dog, or like taking care of the baby. So the other thing I was thinking too, after running the W Connection for 14 years, I see that if that group didn't work for you, then you tried the next thing, and then you tried the next thing. So we use this term kind of showing up, and helping yourself moving forward, right?
Like
but that takes time. First, you see those slivers of hope, and hopefully you grab onto them, and then you move forward a little more. Aliza is a GEM volunteer.
What does GEM mean?
I'll let you explain it.
So what we see at the W Connection is we see a life cycle of a member, right? So they first come in, and maybe they can't get through the meeting without crying, right? And after a while, and this is wonderful to stand on the sidelines and be able to watch people grow. So first, maybe they're just listening, and maybe they're just crying. And then after a while, they speak, and they go to something called our peer-led topic meetings. And those are for women who are more newly widowed, right? And they want to hear. So for instance, last month, our topic was navigating the holidays. So for widows in our peer-led support group, well, they were just about, let me get through this holiday. And then we have this second meeting, again, going along that life cycle of a widow, where this group is going to talk about finding joy, right? There's that piece where you're navigating, and then, like you said, with dating, right? When am I ready to find joy? When am I going to go to that next step? Then you have our beautiful, what we call GEM volunteers. And this is the people who say, you know what? I've gotten so much out of this organization that I want to give back. And you both know more about post-traumatic growth than I do, and it's like, this is where I see women really thriving, when they become a GEM volunteer or a GEM donor, and they start to give back to the organization.
Nice.
I think the point, for me, the point is that I couldn't help but give back, right? First off, I adore Dawn, right? And the organization gave me so much. This idea of peer-to-peer mentorship, this peer-to-peer support, was exactly what I needed, especially because my grief looked very different than what I thought grief was supposed to look like. I wasn't stuck in my bed for 3 weeks or even 2 days. I wasn't crying all the time. And that in and of itself made me feel anxious and guilty.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I'm like, I should be, I used to tell him, I would say, I feel like I should be falling apart more than I am, and not selling my house. I had a summer house that I wanted to get rid of, and I went against all my advice of 40 years, which was don't do anything for a year.
And why is it I haven't called my doctor begging and screaming for a prescription for something? Because everybody else seems to have to do that, even the people who were grieving Gary's death around me. And what I learned from these other women was, one, there is no timeline for grief, right? It can hit you at any time. And I met women that were in 6 months out, 10 years out, 3 years out, and they were all doing it differently in whatever stage of life they were, whether they had a new partner or not.
Right.
But the most important thing is that you surround yourself with people who understand what it's like to sit and live in it, and then you get more support.
Right.
From the smallest things to the biggest things.
Do it so differently.
I think what I learned and tell others is one grief experience is one grief experience. I mean, there are no rules, there's no patterns. And the other one, big one, which you had just mentioned this word, stay away from the word should. Do not should on yourself. Do not allow yourself to be shoulded on. It's bullshit. And you can tell when you're saying something like, I should be falling apart. Just no. It's anything that starts with I should be, unless it's, security, putting on your seatbelt when you're in the car. Yes, you should do that. But anything more than just the basic safety and security, should doesn't belong in a griever's life from themselves or others.
And the advice. I mean, I gave people advice, and I just did what I wanted to do. And I met a guy in the grief group before I quit it. And he was a golfer, and we golfed for 6 months together.
Fun.
So,
you need that.
But, you just do what you do. You do what feels good. You do what helps you survive.
Right.
We're in survival mode.
Right. As long as you are not hurting yourself or others, everything else is perfectly normal.
Well, it was
Perfectly
funny
okay.
because my mother looked at me and said, there's some things I want to change in my life, but somewhere, somehow, I read that the first year you shouldn't. I don't even know where that comes from. I go, I don't know where it comes from either. So why are we doing it? It's like...
My sister-in-law, Gary's brother also died not long after him. And it was very tough for that family too. So her husband died, and they had been talking about moving to the next town over because her children had moved to the next town over. And we were talking, and she said, I sold the house. I said, that's fantastic. She said, you don't think that I should wait? I said, does it feel good to sell a house? Yeah, it feels great. I'm really excited about it. Don't you think you deserve to be excited about something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Well, then go decorate a new house, enjoy it, right?
Right.
You have to understand that what you should expect is that you should expect that you should feel excited, and you can feel excited, and that you should expect that there can still be good feelings and good things.
I like this. That's good advice. What is your advice for someone that's grieving the loss of a spouse, Jennifer?
I think I just gave it, but short of, don't harm yourself or others.
Yeah.
Everything else is fine. Don't shut on yourself.
Did something work particularly well for you?
I got in the habit of congratulating myself in the evening
Ooh, I love this.
that I made it through the day.
Yeah.
That helped a lot. I art journaled a lot, and was gentle with myself. I think that's the biggest thing, being gentle with yourself.
We used to start the meeting saying, how many years widowed, and tell me what you're proud of this month. Because so many times
I like that.
you don't realize how hard this is.
Yep.
So you're like, oh, if I'm not getting up off the bathroom floor, we're all there to say that's okay. So if somebody came in and say, you know what, I'm proud this month because you know what, I didn't cry or fall apart at night. We're like, oh my God, that is great. So everything should be celebrated. Be gentle on yourself and kind of see those things that you're proud of.
And I worked with 9/11 widows from the fire department for 10 years. And one thing that they said, now I learned from them because I'm not a widow and I'm not an expert in that particular loss. They said one of the hardest times was at night when everybody was asleep and they would maybe be watching a show with their husbands or having a glass of wine or just talking about their day.
Yeah.
So I like that you said, people would say, okay.
Yeah, and that is one of the things I think aside from getting those strategies at the W Connection meeting, it's this kind of community that holds each other up. You're doing great, right?
Keep looking for your people.
Yeah. Keep looking
find
for
your
your
people.
people.
And don't let anybody tell you what, how it
Even your
what they
counselor that's been telling you forever that you shouldn't make any changes for a year.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That just came up the other day. We were talking about that. We said, why does everybody say that?
I know. I
have to
hate
change
say
that.
I've said it. Well, where do we find you guys?
So to find the W Connection, it is wconnection.org. We are a member-based organization, but there is a free information session run like every 3 weeks. So you either come and join us or you do a free information session. So we are online. We are a nationwide organization, and we do have a few widows in Australia and Canada and England, which is pretty awesome. And we have 6 clubs. So, we went virtual when the pandemic hit, and now we're starting to go in person again as well. So just find us at wconnection.org.
Okay.
I like it.
Do you have anything you want to market there?
Aliza?
I would just echo that finding the W Connection has been outstanding for me, and I think others can really benefit from it as well.
You can find me at hospicedoctorswidow.com, and I have a contact page there, and I have a number of free resources
And
on
tell
the
them
resource
about your
page.
book.
My book is called The Hospice Doctor's Widow, a Journal. It's the art journal that I kept while my husband was ill and for about a year and a half after he died. And it's helped a lot of people, and that just really makes
It
me
is a
happy.
phenomenal book, and it's gotten rave reviews.
And won
my
awards.
mother tells me often how good it is.
And it's on my coffee table.
And she reads a lot of grief books, so that's a big deal that she's like, no, that's really
huge.
amazing. That's what she says.
Well, did indeed.
I just want to thank all of you, and I want to say that, you're a great example of how having the death of a spouse does not destroy your life, even though initially it might feel like that. And I want to thank my mom, because she has been an amazing example to me that you can find hope after loss, even when your spouse of 60 years dies, and she's gone on to find love again. And it's been really inspiring to me. So thank you all very much.
And thank you, Heidi. And thank you all. And I want to remind you about Frank Power's book that he's written with me, my fiance. It's called Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating. And if there are some of you out there who are ready to date and look for love again, we hope that you'll get the book, and it will be released on Valentine's Day, but you can pre-order it at Open to Hope or thedatingdoctors.com. And all the proceeds, 100%, are going to the Open to Hope Foundation to keep up our mission of helping people find hope after loss. And Heidi and I want to thank you for watching this show today and listening to it. And we want to say to you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.